Welcome back to Peterson Auto. Today we're going to show you how to tap out a gasket. So we're working on a minivan with a 3.3 Chrysler engine today, and parts store says this wonderful upper to lower intake gasket is not available. So we're going to show you how to tap one out. First thing you need is gasket material. Second thing is your part. Third thing is a nice little hammer. Most of the time you wind up cutting your gasket material to size. I'm just gonna tap it to cut it to size. So you can kind of go ahead and feel out where everything is. If you don't cut it to size to start with, you can feel where your ridges are. And you just take your hammer, give it a couple taps, start following it around. And the edge of the gasket's the edge of the piece is gonna cut the gasket for you, so you can see it's happening. Gentle taps are all you need. Make sure you keep holding it in place. You don't want it moving on you. That's the key here. Don't let it move and you'll be fine. Now at this point, I'm gonna put a little rip there, get that side done, and start moving over here. Okay, now I ripped that off. We can take this gasket material, set it aside, and continue around the outside. Again, making sure to keep everything lined up and keep holding it in place. And you can see I slid a little bit there, so I'm going to hold it down a little better. Okay, now we have our rough shape, and you can see there's some other holes. There's some cleanup needs to be done. At this point I'll take it off, clean up any hangover you have. It's not the prettiest method doing it this way, especially with just cheap gasket material. This is just stuff I have laying around for those times where you just can't get anything, like this intake manifold upper to lower gasket here. So we're going to start lining it up again, and this time we're going to tap out the insides. Same principle applies. Find the edge, just tap along. There you go. Now you can see the hole starting to open up. Now you have a bolt hole over here underneath my thumb. We're going to go ahead and do that one. Usually I take the hammer and give it a couple rubs, and then find the hole and tap around that area. Now with the bolt hole, you might not be able to get the whole way through with the hammer. Might have to go with something else. Don't let stuff slide too far into your intake. Well, that is in there, so I'll have to get that out. Okay, so once you found your hole, you can take yourself a nice round punch and tap the edges to actually cut the material. You can also take the punch and roll it, and it'll cut the material for you. That one's pretty well cut the whole way around. We can just go ahead and take it out and carefully peel that last little bit. If you need to trim it up with the razor blade, you can. Most of the time it's not going to hurt leaving it as is. So, but if you need to trim it up, you can. Going to go on to the next hole here. Make sure everything's still lined up. Now we can carefully pull this out. We can just trim and tear those edges a little bit. And there's our second hole there. As you go further and further, you have to be more and more careful with this, because the gasket's going to have more and more holes, and it's going to be more and more fragile. So just something to remember, something to consider. Another tip is work from the inside out on any holes you're doing. When you're working from the inside out, you have a little less chance of causing some kind of damage or messing something up. It's also a little bit easier if you do hit it too hard. You're going to punch through versus rip the outside of the gasket most of the time. Sometimes a screwdriver will help you if you have something that's a tight hole like that to get it out. So you can see our edges still need some work. We're going to get working on those. We're going to actually just roll them. Take your round punch and just roll it along the edges. Any kind of pressure really will work here. You know, I've seen people use the whole punch method like I am here and then do the entire gasket that way. It works. It's a little slower to roll them than it is to actually just go ahead and tap them. But, you know, to each their own. When you do your own thing, you'll start learning and figuring out what works best for your method and, you know, your work style. So for me, tapping works best, and that's what I'm doing. So we're going to go on to the next hole here. Rub. Couple hits to find the hole. And then just a nice trace around it with the round punch. And there we go. There's another hole. Another tip for you is, if you have a punch that very well fits the hole, you want to have, you know, barely any movement. This one's probably a little small for it. You can actually go ahead and punch the hole. We might try that on the next hole for you, just to give you an example of how it's done, because this vehicle just needs to run again, and it needs to have the least amount of money and time and effort put into it. So, you know, it's one of those freebie jobs for someone who's in need. So I'm not making money here, but I do have to make a gasket. So we'll give YouTube a nice little video showing you how to make a gasket in the process. At least something good will come out of fixing this vehicle here. And you can clean up your edges with a razor blade, a little sandpaper, carefully a little sandpaper, a bunch of other stuff really. Pretty much anything that will clean an edge. So here I put my finger on here, I'm finding the hole. I'm going to start my punch on there, just to find it. Okay, I'm a little off. Right there, you push through, now we have a hole. Now that hole is going to be punch sized. As you can see, there's a little flare out on the back, like you get from you know, drilling a hole in metal. So that's one thing to remember when you punch a hole versus tap it out, is you want to have some kind of punch that's as close as possible to the size of the hole you're working with. If you don't have something as close as possible, you could wind up with a hole that's a little bit rougher. So now we're going to move on to these other couple, get them done, and once we get them done, I'll show you the finished product here. Okay, so you can see now we're getting this last one done, getting everything ready to go. Just got one more bolt hole to get after this, and we'll be ready to put this manifold back on. You can use this for pretty much any gasket that would be a flat surface gasket. So I wouldn't use it for valve cover gaskets, for example. They're not really a flat surface. You use it for intake manifold gaskets, water pump gaskets, any kind of flat surface gasket like that, and you'll be good to go. So that being said, I've done a lot of this back in my younger years, which I'm not that old, so you know, you can imagine how old I was when I was doing this, pretty much as a kid doing it. Tapping out pump gaskets for fuel oil trucks, actually, believe it or not. Now, here's another little tip for you. Hold it in place. You can use your punch if you need to. That'll at least help me go ahead and walk it around here and find the hole. And then pinch it down with your fingers and start cutting right there, right through. So clean up that. Once we get that cleaned up, here I'm using the punch to cut the edge. You can see it's a little cleaner. Now you have a gasket that is usable to reseal your engine back together. You know, not the greatest, not the cleanest, not the nicest, but man, I tell you what, this is a lot better than trying to find one in a junkyard. So now you know how to tap out a gasket. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or suggestions for a video, please, you know, leave a comment or get in touch with me and let me know what you'd like to see, because that is what this is about. This is about teaching you, the YouTube viewer, how to do different automotive tasks. So after we've tapped out this gasket, we're going to put this all back together, and I'm going to get this car out of here and out of my hair. So thank you for watching. Please, you know, please comment and subscribe. Please make sure you subscribe, so that way you can keep in touch with all the new stuff we're coming out with here.